Well, guys, good to have you with us this morning. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 5. We're starting our next little series in the book of Matthew. And beginning with 5 is the Sermon on the Mount. And so we've titled this series, What Did Jesus Really Teach? One of the reasons why we're doing that is there's a lot of misconceptions about who Jesus is, what he came to do, what he really said. A lot of the times people just kind of make up their own Jesus. They kind of just think, well, Jesus wouldn't do this, or Jesus wouldn't have said that, and they've not actually read his words. And so today we kick off. If you have a Bible and it has the red letters in it, you'll see, the next 3 chapters are just nothing but his teaching, his Sermon on the Mount. So today we're going to be looking at those first 12 verses as we start this up, sometimes called the Beatitudes. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been in one of those contests where you put up with a lot because you know that the prize at the end is going to be worth it? Think about this. Maybe some of y'all have been those ones where keep a hand on a truck, right? Where have you done that? I think they've done it even at some of our parks here when they have special days in Franklin. The idea is as long as you have a hand on the truck, you're in the running to get the truck. And so, and I think they allow for like a 5-minute bathroom break and you can come back. But it's hardcore of people who will stand all day long, because I'm going to get that. I watched a clip with my kids one day on YouTube about some people in Texas, and this was a challenge where there were hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake if these 2 people were willing to be in a nuclear bunker for 100 days with no contact from the outside. You think about what people are willing to put up with when they know what's on the other side, what's coming, right? I mean, think about that. Would you do that? Would you be willing to forego all your electronics and all that kind of stuff? No contact with people. If you said, look, just give me 100 days. I'll be back, hopefully. And I'm going to be way richer when you see me, right? It's going to be awesome. I'm going to look different. I'm going to smell different. I have dollar bills on me all the time. You can think, hey, maybe that would be a good thing. But today, what we're going to be looking at are those things that you say, is it worth it, what I'm going to go through for what's on the other side? And that's how Jesus really starts this whole message, is he says, there is something that's coming on the other side, and there are going to be things that you will endure, but it's worth it. So let me pray, and then we are going to go through this, beginning line by line, verse by verse, through the Gospel of Matthew, beginning in chapter 5. So let's do that. Lord God, I thank you for today, for what you want to teach us through this passage. Lord, for many of us, we have heard this passage so many times, where we know it, we could say, we've read through it so many times, we think we know a lot about it. And God, even if we do know a lot about it, I pray that just during this time, we would just try to hear you clearly, that we'd be thinking more on these words, that Holy Spirit, you are behind every single one of them. They are your words. They are without error, Lord. They are for us to guide our lives today and to submit to them. So speak to us today in only the way that you can. We ask you to be with us in here, be with those littlest ones who now have gone over to their time for worship and Bible study. Lord, I pray for everything that's about to go on today, from the Bible studies that we'll have after this to what's just happening here, to the worship time tonight, the business meeting as well, that all of this would give you glory. Our focus be on you and hearing from you. So we pray these things in your name, Jesus. Amen. So let's start with verse 1, and it says this: when he saw the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, and then he goes on here. So let's talk for just a moment about where this is. It says that he goes up on a mountain. We know he is in the Galilee area in the northern part of Israel. And this is probably, there's a lot of hills out in that area. There is a traditional location. You can go there today And there is a church on this site. That's how they preserved all these sites through the last 2,000 years of history. There's a church that's built on that site. And this is where we believe was the area. You know, we know that Luke says in his gospel that there was a flat place up in the mountain area where he went up and he spoke. This had to have been a place probably where he could have spoken to up maybe 1,000 people. And so there is a traditional location. This appears to be it. You can go to these sites, see that, just see it. There's a church there, but you can go and kind of see the location and kind of get in your mind what that place was like. A couple other things I want you to notice. There is something that Matthew may be doing. Maybe, I think we've seen enough of this already where Matthew has highlighted in his gospel. If you remember the first 4 chapters, there are things that he does that are Moses-like. There are things like even his story where he highlights certain things that seem similar to the Moses story. And here is one of those things that we see. It does appear that Matthew may be highlighting once again that Jesus is like Moses. Notice how it says, when he saw the crowds, he went up on the mountain. And after he sat down, his disciples came, he began to teach them. This is not that different, right, than what do we see in the Exodus story where Moses goes up onto the mountain. He comes back down with these commandments that the people are about to hear, and this is going to chart the course of their life. And so here we are. He is there, and he's on this mountain. And notice who he's going to teach, by the way. Just going to says his disciples. Now, who are these people? This is not necessarily the 12. Now, there is some speculation that the 12 have already been chosen. You can see that a little bit later in the Gospel of Matthew. We're not quite sure. Luke 6 places the Sermon on the Mount after he's called the apostles, the 12. But regardless, the word disciples is a much broader term. It's not just used of his 12. This is a significant population that's there, and there's a set of people who are dedicated to hearing from him. And so this, by the way, is important because everything that we're about to see down below is for his followers. This is not a general promise to just anybody. These are to those who are dedicated followers of Jesus. This is for them to hear. This is for them. So a couple of things that we need to notice just as we get ready, as we try to understand this, because if you've ever looked at these before, you're kind of saying, well, what do I do with this? Let me tell you just a couple things to notice as you skim through this already. First off, there is this heavenly focus. There's this focus on the kingdom of heaven. So verse 3 says, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Verse 10 says, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Verse 12 says, rejoice because your reward is great in heaven. So there's some aspect of this as he's saying, as you go through this, recognize that what is coming is the kingdom. What is coming for you, what you will have in the end is this in heaven. The kingdom is the focus here. There's this future aspect, this focus as they are to hear these things. But there's also a present focus as well. Notice this, for the kingdom is theirs. Blessed are those who are persecuted, for the kingdom is theirs. Be glad and rejoice because your reward is great in heaven. Do you get that? In the same vein, he's talking about what's coming, that the kingdom is not fully here yet, but as he talks to his followers, he talks as if they already have it as well. Now, this is key because for the Christian life, this is how this plays out. We know that as we've trusted in Jesus, we have salvation. However, we have it now, but we are not there yet. He's not taken us up to him. We've not entered into heaven yet, but we know it's already ours because of the work of Jesus. And so recognize in here, there is this kingdom focus, this focus of what is coming down the road, but at the same time, he talks as if they already have it in their hands. And so keep that in mind as well. It is future, but also present. It's so assured for them. That's what's there. Now let's begin to look, and we start to see the very first word, blessed. You ever read, like, why don't we say blessed? Why is it blessed? Well, because I've always wondered, why don't we just say blessed, right? Well, because the word is not necessarily blessed. It's not that they have been blessed. It's this word that typically means something like happy. It's a word that typically means joyful. It's frequently used in the Psalms. It's not the word that they have been blessed, so to speak, like they've had a blessing put on them, but it just means happy, joyful. Now, this is interesting because I think Jesus, is doing this for a reason. And I think the reason why we see this sermon series set up this way too in Jesus' preaching is, notice how the very first psalm in the book of Psalms begins. How happy is the one who does not walk in the advice of the wicked. Now notice that this is the same word. When they translated the Psalter from Hebrew into Greek, it's the same word that is used here, that how happy, how blessed, how joyful. So notice what the Psalm says, even as it's the introduction to the whole book. Psalm 1 is, how happy is the one who does what? Not walk in the advice of the wicked, or stand in the pathway of sinners, or sit in the company of mockers. Instead, his delight is in the Lord's instruction, and he meditates on it day and night. See, the book of Psalms is gearing the people up, saying, hey, look, if you want to know how to live a happy and a joyful life, it will be better for you to not go down the road that everybody else goes down, not go down that road of following the advice of wicked people, not plotting your own course, living your own truths. It's going down the road belonging to Christ. It's going down the road belonging to the Lord and his instruction. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that here is Jesus, as he's starting this message off to the people, is he's using that same language. Blessed, happy, joyful, going back to, you have a way to go. Which path are you going to take? So notice the first one he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. So what does this mean? Poor in spirit. Well, here's our best guess at what that looks at. It's not that they're just poor people. That's not the idea. It appears that their spirits are poor. The way they use a phrase like this is it's the idea that they have been downtrodden, that they have been crushed. They use the word poor because in the same way that a poor person would have nothing, that they have had nothing left that for them, they've recognized they can't care for themselves. This is the idea for their spirit. They've come to a place of themselves and they have recognized, I can't do anything. I can't save myself. I can't help myself. I have nothing except Jesus. As we just heard the song right before, I'd rather have Jesus than anything else. These are people who recognize I have nothing and I just need God. That's all it's all that matters to me. I just need God. And so it's saying these are the poor in spirit, the people who recognize that they have nothing. All they can do is just come to a place where they rely on God. It says the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Doesn't mean that the reversal is going to happen immediately, that they've got this kingdom in front of them, they get to now live like royalty. No, but they know that as they depend on God, especially for their salvation, they can be assured that he's got them covered in the future, and they have the kingdom. Look at this one. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Now, what are these people mourning about? Well, if you look at how that word is used here, it's used a lot of the time over death. We mourn because people around us, life happens. We're grieved by the things of the world. Think about this. Right? What brings us to mourning? We mourn over the loss of somebody. You see that used in the Old Testament. We also see this in the Bible as well, of the mourning over sin. We see sin that has gone in others' lives, and you see the kind of road that they take and that toll that it has taken on them, and you're watching and saying, it's like I don't even know this person anymore. But it also is something you see in the New Testament is I'm mourning over my own sin as well. But regardless, this word seems to be talking about you're looking at the world around, and there is a lot of sorrow that has come because of all that you've experienced, all that you're seeing around you. And it says, hey, guess what? In that future, you will be comforted one day. You're not going to find it necessarily just immediately, but you will be comforted. For those who belong to him, comfort will come. It's a divine comfort. And by the way, that idea of comforting, it is interesting. I think sometimes when we think about comfort, we just think of like a state of mind. Like you will finally find some comfort. You'll be, but I don't know if that's necessarily what's being said here. It seems to be that someone will comfort them. And I think that that's the idea of, if you kind of think about what this whole context is about, is you find comfort because of who is now with you in the end, in the kingdom. Look at how this you see in Revelation 21, talking about how mourning will all be gone, crying will all be gone. It says, then I heard a loud voice from the throne, look, God's dwelling is with humanity. He will live with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them and will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Grief, crying, pain will be no more, because the previous things have passed away. You see, what takes away mourning and what takes away crying is it's the presence of God. And so it appears that it's saying, hey, those who have sadness and sorrow now, recognize that when you're with him, it's all gone. That will all be done away with. You may have it now, and all of us will have it. But when you are in the kingdom, it will be gone. It will be worth it, is what Jesus is saying here. How about this one? Blessed are the humble, for they will inherit the earth. Remember, some of your translations will say, blessed are the meek. We don't really use that word so much anymore. Humble, though, is this idea of they're gentle. These are people who are really, if you kind of think about the context and how they're using this word, it is people that are necessarily not seeking to have revenge on those who have had something happen to them. It says that, these are the people that they're not looking to just destroy back. They're going to be humble about what's happened to them. They're not looking, and you'll see a little bit more of this as he talks about mercy as well. But it says that those who are humble, those who have been afflicted, those who are more gentle, they're not seeking to fight back. What does it say? It says that they will inherit the earth. Now, this is really interesting because this seems to be a quotation, by the way, what Jesus said. He's just quoting the Psalms here. Psalm 37, verses 8 through 11. Refrain from anger. Give up your rage. Don't be agitated. It can only bring harm. For evildoers will be destroyed, but those who put their hope in the Lord will, what? Inherit the land. A little while, and the wicked person will be no more. Though you look for him, he'll not be there. But what does it say? The humble will inherit the land and will enjoy abundant prosperity. See, this is the idea, is as you see all these things happening to you, you're not saying, I got to take this all in my hands. I'm going to have to do all I can to fight back. I'm willing to submit to the Lord. I'm not going to let it change me. I'm going to just humbly wait upon him. And it says that you will inherit the land. Well, what does that look like? Does it mean that you're literally going to inherit land? This phrase, inheriting the land, actually comes from the Torah as well. It's about the idea that they would inherit the promised land. But notice how it's used here in Deuteronomy 4. Now listen, Israel, listen to the statutes and ordinances I'm teaching you to follow, so that you may live, enter, and take possession of the land the God of your ancestors giving you. The idea when it says that you will inherit the land, Jesus is not saying that for the Christian, if you just are humble, you're going to enjoy land. You're going to enjoy a piece of Israel at some point. Now, that's not the point. He's not telling them that if you'll stay here. No, that's not really what he's saying. What he's saying is that they will enjoy their inheritance. You see, Israel was promised an inheritance. They were promised rest in the land if they followed him and obeyed him. But if you read most of the Old Testament, that never happens. In fact, they never actually enjoy the full extent of the land because of their disobedience. And so the promise is they will finally be able to obtain that inheritance and that rest. And so what Jesus is saying is that the humble will inherit the land, meaning at the end, they will find that rest. They will find that inheritance in the kingdom. No matter what's happened to them, they'll find it with the Lord. How about this? Look at verse 6. Verse 6 says this: Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Now, what does this look like? That they're hungering and they're thirsting. It says they're hungering and thirsting for righteousness. This seems to mean that they are looking around and they're saying, I desire. It's one of two things. Either I desire to be more righteous. God, I look at myself and I recognize that I am not who I need to be. You ever had those moments where you kind of think, wow, there's a lot of problems here. If you really are quiet and you're really beginning to examine your life and you recognize that God has desired so much more for you, and yet you see, I have missed it over and over, or I struggle over and over and over with these things. So it says those who desire righteousness will be filled. The other thing it seems to be, though, is these are the idea that these are people who they desire, right? They desire that the world would be filled with righteousness. They desire, as they look around, they say, I just don't see God. I don't see his influence here. I see people going their own way. I see people who don't care. They don't even give a thought to him. My desire is that this place that people would know, we'd feel God's spirit everywhere we go. And it says, well, guess what? In the end, it will. They will be filled because they'll see God's presence. They'll experience his presence. Look what this says here in 2 Peter. It seems like what Peter is saying here. 2 Peter 3, 10 through 13. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and on that day the heavens will pass away with a loud noise, the elements will burn and be dissolved, and the earth and the works on it will be disclosed. Since all things are dissolved this way, it's clear that the sorts of people you should be, holy in conduct and godliness, as you wait for the day of God and hasten its coming. Because on that day, the heavens will be dissolved with fire, the elements will melt with heat. But based on his promise, we wait for new heavens and new earth where righteousness dwells. Right? It's this idea that I desire to see God's creation more filled with him and his world, with the scriptures, with the people obeying him. It says, at some point, that's going to happen. When he comes back, he's going to redo it all. And the whole world will be filled with his righteousness at that point. So hang in there is what it says. Even though you get discouraged and you think it's all going to hell in a handbasket, right? You look out there and you watch the news all the time. It says, I wait and recognize that I can't fix that, but I trust him. My desire is that I push for that, and yet I just wait and recognize it's going to come when he comes. How about this one? Mercy. It says this, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Now this is similar to the humble, that the humble are saying, hey, just hold back, don't do it. Mercy is the same idea, right? This is the idea that I'm not going to give people what I know that they deserve, right? These are the people that were saying, like mercy is the idea that I know that they should get a smackdown. I know that they've messed up, and I'm going to do it to them. I need to give it to them. There's some of y'all have these personalities like this, right? There's some of us in here who are more on the merciful side. There's some of y'all who are not, right? Some of y'all are like, the moment something's gone down, you know that person's going to tell you, right? And there's the other ones like, we all do this every now and then. It's going to be okay. You even see that in marriage sometimes. You get the merciful and the non-merciful, and you need those to kind of balance out each other sometimes. But here it is. These are the people who says, hey, the merciful. These are the people who, you want to say, I'm not going to hit every single offense that I see every single time. It says, because they will be shown mercy. I'm not going to take matters into my own hands. You see, in our culture that don't do it. Hit it hard. Make sure you see, if you see those things, fight back, punch every time. That's what we shoot for. But the scriptures say, if you live in a merciful way, God's going to show you mercy as well. How about this? Blessed are the pure in heart. What does that look like? Well, here's the idea. When it talks about those who hunger and seek righteousness, see, I want to be right, I want to do right. This is actually expressly of what does your heart look like? These are the people what does your mind look like? These are people saying, I'm trying to live for the Lord. It's not just about actions. God is concerned with the heart. You might say, well, I'm not that bad of a person. Well, but what does the inside look like? These are the people saying, I want not only my actions, but what my heart to look right. And it says they will see God. Now this is really key because in the Old Testament, no one sees God. We even see that in Exodus 33:20. It says no one can see God and live. So this is meaning, though, that for those who truly are trying to live for the Lord and their heart is even right, that there will be a chance when you see him in the future. Look at the Psalms. It says, Psalm 17:15, when I see your face in righteousness, when I awake, I'll be satisfied with your presence. Notice this one, Psalm 24. Who may ascend to the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? The one who has a clean hands and a pure heart, who has not appealed to what is false, who's not sworn deceitfully. He will receive a blessing from the Lord and righteousness from God of his salvation. Such is the generation of those who inquire of him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. So who are the people who can go, who will be in his presence? These are the people who have a right heart with him. These are the people who have a desire to know him. They have a desire to have not just their actions reflect it, but their hearts reflect one that is connected to him. How about this one? Blessed are the peacemakers. It just literally means those who make peace. So it could be that those who are trying to say, hey, look, I'm not trying to blow things up. I want to try to make sure that we have calm and peace as we go. It could be, but it also could be also talking about those who make peace between God and man. Look what the prophet Isaiah says here. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of the herald who proclaims peace, who brings news of good things, who proclaims salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns, right? So could be very well that the peacemakers are those who are saying, it's not about like, hey, how do we solve all these problems? How do we make peace here? But it's how do I make sure that people know that they can have peace with God, that they can they hear that news about God. And then it says, not only are they peacemakers, but it says that they will be sons of God. These are the people who, it says that they become God's children. Look what 1 John tells us about this. See what great love the Father has given us, that we should be called God's children, and we are. The reason the world doesn't know us is that it didn't know him. Dear friends, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet been revealed. We know that when he appears, we will be like him because we will see him as he is. And everyone who has put hope in him purifies himself just as he is pure. So it's this idea that those who belong to him are his children is what it says. It's just another subtle way to say these are his people. These are the ones who want to communicate his peace to the world and who he is. They belong to him. They're his children. And then we round off this last section with this phrase. And I think this is one that's really interesting to look at here. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. So up to this point, we have seen, that there are going to be things that were going to happen to people. Have struggles that will go. They'll find fulfillment in the kingdom. Things that have done wrong to them here, God will take care of them there. He'll comfort them there. But then he says about something that's going to happen to those who are his. It says those who are persecuted. And it says they're persecuted for righteousness. This idea, that word persecuted means to be pursued. It has a broad meaning, though. It's not just a harassment, but it also means ridiculed. And notice what it says. It's ridiculed because of righteousness. Now, this is key. We'll talk about this in just a second, but look how even Peter talks about this. But even if you should suffer for righteousness, you're blessed. Do not fear them or be intimidated. But in your hearts, regard Christ the Lord as holy, ready at any time to give a defense to anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that is in you. Now, here is what I think is absolutely fascinating about this, right? It says that you're going to be persecuted for righteousness' sake. Sometimes when we think about, okay, if I'm going to be a follower of Jesus, if I'm going to follow Jesus, I'm going to be persecuted. And we think about my persecution is going to be because I've declared that Jesus is the only way. And many of us, we say, yes, I understand that. I'm ready for this. I'm ready for, to go and to be persecuted for saying that Jesus is the only way to heaven. But notice that's not what it says here. It says that they're going to be persecuted because of righteousness. Think about this for just a moment. This is people are saying that I'm going to try to live for God, and because I'm going to live for God, I'm going to be persecuted. It's not just that I verbally believe the gospel. It's that I'm going to experience persecution, harassment, because I want to live for him. It's not just that you will experience hardship because you believe in Jesus. It's going to be things that you believe from the scriptures. On righteousness, you believe that the Bible tells us what is righteous and what's not. If you have a view of biblical morality that comes from the scriptures and you hold to that, there are going to be people who are not fine with that. You don't have to look far, and you probably know this through maybe personal relationships you've had with people where just by very nature of believing the scriptures, they are offended that you believe the Bible. You haven't said anything to them in particular. I mean, you've said this is what I believe, but for the very nature that you hold to that, they're now mad at you and they begin to call you names. Think about this. Look at the next verse. Blessed are you when they insult you. You understand that my persecution is talking about, sometimes we think about persecution. Jesus is not just saying they're going to be hunted down and persecuted like we think about with the early church, but that if you're truly going to live for him, you're going to be insulted. You're going to be harassed. You're going to be, that's part of this. And this is key. A lot of the time we think that my insults that are going to come my way are simply because I'm a Christian. That's not necessarily it. The insults will come and the pressure will come on you because you say, I'm trying to live in righteousness. So think about this kind of pressure that will come even in the church, right? Not only do you hold to biblical morality, but maybe you're saying, well, I'm trying to hold to things that I think are important, like what does biblical headship and submission look like? Or I'm trying to hold to how should we lead in a church? How should this look like? Or I'm trying to hold to how should my family look like? And you got all people with all sorts of different opinions telling you, here's how it's going to be. And what is it going to do? It's going to come as insults. It's going to come as the kind of critique that they're going to use. They're going to use labels on you just simply because you're trying to say, here's what I see in God's word, and I'm trying to live this out in my life. It may not just simply be Christian. You believe in Jesus. We see that in other parts of the world. But in this location where we live, where a lot of people are Christians, a lot of the time it comes to, you really mean that, and you're living like that, and you're trying to see, God, show me how to live this way. You're going to see that pressure and those insults come because you're just trying to live for him. So notice what it says. Blessed are they when they insult you and persecute you. So he links them that sometimes it may be harsher, real persecution. Sometimes it's just going to be insults that are going to try to steer you and to make you not, these may not even be gospel issues, but that persecution may come is what it says. When they say everything falsely, every kind of false evil against you because of me. Notice that this is all connected to Jesus. If you're going to live like Jesus, truly, do what he says, really live like as we see on the screen here, he really taught, then expect it. Expect it in your life, expect pressure, and guess what? It's going to come in the church too. Sad to say that, but you're going to find pressure in the church and outside the church to steer you in a different direction. But Jesus says, be glad and rejoice, because your reward is great in heaven. For that's how they persecuted the prophets. Meaning for those who throughout the Old Testament and their history, anyone who tried to live for God and tried to do it right amidst a culture that didn't want to, persecution, pressure, insults, slander, all of that stuff came. And he says, rejoice when it happens because you're participating in something that is guaranteed to happen. Participating in something that he's called you. You're participating in his sufferings is what we see as well. So as we walk away, and actually, as we walk away, just a couple things to kind of think through here. As you think about what this passage is ultimately about, Jesus is saying, he might begin with the words blessed, but it's not time that necessarily that happiness comes right now. Many of these things will be completely unrealized until we get to be with him. He's making it very clear that if you're going to follow him now, recognize it could very well be difficult, but in the end, there's something incredible coming. James tells us this in James chapter 1, verses 2-3. Consider it a great joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. So the New Testament gives us this idea that when things are, I go through trials here, it is God working in me. The more I go through these things, I'm being made to look more like him as well. And so that's part of this is blessed are you now when you go through these things because there's a great reward in the end, but it's also making us more like Jesus now. But here's another thing. It destroys this mindset that we have in the church sometimes, that if I follow Jesus, I'm guaranteed all sorts of prosperity. You know, I was just a couple of weeks ago, I interacted on my podcast. There was a video that came out of somebody who had said, hey, if you read the Old Testament just right, if you donate to our ministry now before the Passover, you're guaranteed to get a guardian angel. You're guaranteed to get, 12 times your amount that you have that seed that you have sown, all this stuff, as if like this, we get sucked into this prosperity gospel view sometimes, people. We think if I'm just doing it right, if I'm just living for Jesus, it's smooth sailing. And that's not what Jesus says it is. If you're living for Jesus, expect some collisions with people. And you didn't bring it, except I've just tried to live for him. And so he wants people to be very clear. If you're going to live for me, recognize that it's going to be hard. And it should be for any of his followers. And if you're new to all of this, and if you've been at this long enough, it should be a wake-up call and say, is it worth it following Jesus? See, Jesus was not this easy, hey guys, I really want you to come in. I really want you to write your name on the card and make that prayer and just stay with me. That's not what he's doing. In fact, he's telling them up in front of them right now, if you're going to follow me, expect it will be difficult. And so the question for all of us should ask is it worth still following Jesus to know that sometimes what's waiting for me in the future is what I'm going to get, and it's not necessarily going to be fixed right now? Is it worth still following Jesus if it means it's going to be still rough for me right here? Lastly, this should do is make us heavenly minded. I don't think we think about eternity enough. We're so clouded by everything right now. We always think that eternity is going to be sitting on clouds with harps, right? Like the old Far Side Gallery, kind of like that is heaven. That's not heaven here. In fact, Jesus makes it very clear. It's going to be everything it's going to be everything made right in the end. Do we keep heavenly minded as a result? That's why Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians 4:16, therefore we don't give up. Even though the outer person is being destroyed, our inner person is being renewed day by day. A momentary light affliction is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. So we don't focus on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Maybe for some of you today, it's just say, hey, God, help me to live for eternity. Help me to live for you knowing what's coming, and help me to be ready for that, to believe it too. Some of us just say, yeah, I believe that, but we really don't. Say, God, help me to believe it. Help me to hold to that. So as we walk away, I'm just going to ask you this. Do you believe this message? Maybe you're in here today and you're saying, man, I don't know about this Jesus guy. He's telling me if I accept him, my life's not going to get fixed immediately. Yes. But if you think about what the scriptures tell us, Paul even says this, adopt the same attitude, that of Christ Jesus, who existing in the form of God did not consider equality with God as something to be exploited. Said he emptied himself, assuming the form of a servant, taking on the likeness of humanity. And when he had come like a man, he had humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. You see, the beauty of the gospel is this, is that you can't live this life perfect at all. You and I don't. Even as Christians, we sit here and say, I don't necessarily want to live like that sometimes. But the gospel is that God did it for us. Jesus left his throne in heaven and came and lived the perfect life. He went through the humility that he told all of his people to be ready for. He went through the insults and all the persecution. And why did he do it? He did it for us. Because at the cross, he was going to take your record and have it nailed to him. And at the resurrection, he gives you his record, and your record stays in the tomb. Do you have that assurance? Have you believed on that yet? And if you recognize that he's saved you, are you now looking forward to when you get to be with him and to spend eternity with him? Let me pray with you now. Lord God, I thank you for the scriptures. I thank you for this message that we see right here. Lord God, we recognize it's not always going to be easy in this life. We recognize that there are going to be troubles that come, but there is a beautiful, beautiful eternity that is waiting for those who belong to you. God, I'm reminded, though, in a room like this, that we have some who will not spend an eternity with you. It's not an eternity with you which they will spend. It's eternity away from you, an eternity really in hell. And this is a scary, scary thought. Lord, some people might even say, well, this place is as bad as it's going to be. It will not. This is not as bad as it's going to be. It will for the Christian be, though. Lord, help us to recognize what is waiting for us on the other side. Help us to trust in you now with what's happening in our lives. Help us to have a hope that you will one day make it right. Lord, help us to know that as we struggle with all these things, you already did that for us. And we see it clearly in the gospel. Lord, if there's anybody in here today who doesn't know you, I pray that today would be the day that they encounter you finally. We pray these things in your name, Jesus. Amen.